Have you ever wondered why some people push love away? Why they always expect the worst? Or why they seem to sabotage every good thing that comes into their life? It's not just personality, it's not weakness, it's often trauma, childhood trauma. Studies show over 60% of adults have experienced at least one form of childhood trauma, and most of us never realize just how deeply it shaped our lives until everything starts falling apart. What childhood trauma really is. So childhood trauma isn't just about obvious abuse. It's about anything that overwhelms a child's ability to cope and leaves a lasting emotional wound. The American Psychological Association defines trauma as an emotional response to a terrible event. For children, that doesn't have to be something extreme. It can be subtle, like emotional neglect, constant criticism, or never feeling safe. There are two main categories of trauma in childhood. One is acute trauma, a single terrifying event like a car accident, a house fire, or losing a loved one unexpectedly. The other is chronic trauma, long-term exposure to stress like growing up in a violent household, having emotionally distant parents, or constantly living in fear. And what many people don't realize is that even emotional coldness or being ignored can leave scars just as deep as more obvious trauma. According to the CDC Kaiser Permanente ACE study, the more adverse childhood experiences a person has, things like emotional abuse, parental divorce, substance abuse in the home, the higher their risk for depression, anxiety, addiction, and even physical illnesses like heart disease and diabetes. The body and brain store these early stressors in ways we're only beginning to understand. That's because trauma actually reshapes the brain. The amygdala, which controls our fear response, becomes overactive. The prefrontal cortex, the part that helps with logic and emotional regulation, weakens. And the hippocampus, which handles memory and learning, can shrink. The result? A brain that is wired for survival, not peace. A body that's always on edge, even in safe situations. A person who grows up with trauma often spends their adult life trying to feel safe in a world that feels dangerous, even when it's not. How trauma affects adults. Now let's fast forward. You're no longer a child. Maybe you've moved out, started working, formed relationships, but something still feels off. You find yourself repeating the same painful patterns, trusting people who hurt you, pushing away those who care, overworking yourself to feel valuable, or shutting down whenever you feel too much. These aren't just personality quirks. According to trauma expert Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, trauma doesn't just live in memory, it lives in the body. In his book, The Body Keeps the Score, he explains how the nervous system becomes dysregulated. Your body gets stuck in fight, flight, or freeze mode long after the danger is gone. This is why trauma survivors often struggle with emotional regulation. Something small, like a raised voice or a stressful email, can trigger a response that feels disproportionate. But it's not irrational. It's the brain reacting from a place of learned fear. The psychological term for this is attachment disruption. When a child doesn't receive consistent emotional safety and care, they form insecure attachment styles. This concept comes from attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth. If you had supportive, reliable caregivers, you're likely to form secure attachments. But if your caregivers were unpredictable, cold, or abusive, you might grow up with anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment. And these patterns follow you into adulthood, into your friendships, your romantic relationships, your job interactions, even how you talk to yourself. You might constantly seek validation, but fear intimacy. You might keep everyone at a distance while craving deep connection. You might sabotage happiness because it feels unfamiliar. These patterns aren't your fault. They're survival strategies your younger self developed to feel safe. Here's the hope. The brain can change. Thanks to something called neuroplasticity, it's possible to rewire your mind and body. But healing trauma isn't about ignoring it or pretending it didn't happen. It's about meeting it with understanding, patience, and science-backed tools. One of the most effective paths is therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, helps you recognize the beliefs you form from trauma, like I'm not good enough or love always hurts, and teaches you to replace them with healthier ones. Another powerful approach is EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It helps your brain reprocess traumatic memories so they lose their emotional charge. One of the most effective paths is therapy. Two methods backed by research are cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is based on the idea that your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are all connected. If you can learn to change how you think, you can change how you feel and act. For example, someone who was neglected as a child might automatically assume that being ignored means they're not worth loving. CBT helps you recognize those automatic thoughts, challenge them, and replace them with healthier ones. Over time, this rewires your mental patterns. Instead of spiraling into anxiety or shame, you begin to respond with logic and self-compassion. CBT also gives you tools, like thought records, behavioral experiments, and journaling exercises, to make that change practical and long-lasting. But sometimes the problem isn't in your thinking, it's in your nervous system. That's where EMDR comes in. EMDR doesn't focus on talking through your trauma again and again. Instead, it helps your brain reprocess the trauma on a deeper, physiological level. In a session, you bring up a painful memory while following a specific type of back-and-forth movement, usually eye movements, but sometimes tapping or sound. This bilateral stimulation helps your brain move the traumatic memory out of the fear center and into a calmer, more rational part of your brain. Over time, the memory loses its emotional intensity. You still remember what happened, but it no longer feels like it's happening to you again. CBT helps you rebuild your beliefs. EMDR helps you release what's stuck in your body. For many people, using both, one to build understanding and the other to process pain, becomes the foundation for real healing. But healing isn't just mental. Trauma lives in the body, so body-based therapies matter too. Practices like somatic experiencing, yoga, and breathwork help release stored stress and teach your nervous system how to feel safe again. Mindfulness also plays a key role. Studies from Harvard have shown that regular meditation can actually shrink the amygdala, your brain's fear center, and strengthen the areas responsible for emotional regulation. Even 10 minutes a day can make a difference. Another vital part of healing? Relationships. Safe, stable, supportive relationships help retrain your brain to trust again. This process is called co-regulation. When your nervous system calms down simply by being around someone who feels safe. This can be a therapist, a friend, or a partner who shows up consistently. And finally, there's reparenting. This means giving yourself now what you didn't receive back then. Validation, care, boundaries, love. It's about becoming the adult your younger self needed. And while it can feel strange at first, it's one of the most powerful acts of healing you can offer yourself. If no one ever told you this before, you are not broken. You're not weak. You're someone who survived what was once unbearable. The fact that you're here, trying to understand yourself, already proves how strong you are. The trauma you experienced may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. Healing takes time. It's not linear. Some days will be hard, but every small step, every moment of awareness, every act of self-kindness is part of the process. You're not alone, and you never were. There are millions of people walking this same path, slowly, bravely, step by step. If this video helped you understand your story a little better, share it with someone who might need it. Leave a comment, start a conversation. You never know who needs to hear that they're not crazy, they're just healing. Thank you for watching, and remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just beginning.